Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 1999 and 2011's Persona 2 Innocent Sin, one of the mythical pre-Social Link entries in the series that sees a group of students, and a few adults, fighting forces that are making rumors come true within their city.
Following that is the collaboration between Square and Nintendo, which introduced a whole new genre of gameplay to the Mushroom Kingdom plumber, 1996's Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. There isn't too much that ties these games together, especially on this release week in video games in 2023, but they are both RPGs that have been remade to be on a portable platform.
Yeah, in our Mario RPG, obviously, you get the release this week, and in Persona's case, PSP, and then we didn't get the other one. That'll be a fun thing to address later.
PSP. It's a nut you can play outside.
Yeah, that sure is what they called it once.
Makes me wonder how many PSP games you've actually talked about on the show. It can't be many. It's like Peace Walker. If you throw in Persona 3 Portable.
Loco Roco.
We haven't done Birth by Sleep yet, have we, for Kingdom Hearts?
No, I think it's just those 3. I think it's Peace Walker, Loco Roco, and then if you count Persona 3 Portable.
So add another one to the list. Well, Joe, thanks for picking up last week. I've got a lot going on here at home. We're even just barely making this week's recording work, but how are you doing? What are you playing?
To be perfectly real, I don't think I have touched a video game in a week.
And that happens. It's okay.
Other than the mobile gacha game I play for maybe a total of an hour throughout the entire day. That's it. I don't know. I just haven't really jumped into any video games recently. I still have so many games on Game Pass just staring at me from my desktop, Cocoon.
Yes,
and
me too. And
Sea of
Starfield.
Stars, and just all sorts of stuff. And then I also want to play the game I'm talking about after the next episode. Maybe I'll get to them one day.
So for me, I got the Platinum Trophy and beat Marvel's Spider-Man 2. That was a good time. Probably rolled credits in about just after 20 hours, I think. And that was trying to do a lot of the 100% side activities along the way. But it took a few more hours of grinding out some of the trophies where it's kill these many enemies with these kinds of moves. And so you just got to go around and just grind that out, especially when they're on recharge timers with based on different actions you do. So there's that. Probably my favorite game of the year, though if I had to put is it worth game of the year? It's not. It can be a nominee, but other games will beat it for that. Even if I had to be the best games I played, it's not the best game I played, but it's my favorite game I think of the year so far, and it's why I play video games.
I mean, I'm already pretty damn sure what game has taken away most Game of the Year awards this year.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been what we thought it was at the beginning of the year. That's for sure. Then I did start Sea of Stars. I beat the first boss. So maybe only an hour in. That's a low 30s, mid 30s hour kind of runtime. So I got a lot to go, but I'm liking it so far. I also do like how they have so far a couple toggles for just accessibility and ease of gameplay options. Like the RPG I'm talking about this week, they have timings of, press the button before your attack lands to do more damage. Press the attack before the attack comes in to guard and take less damage. So one of those things is there's a little visual indicator if you hit it and you nailed it to kind of help you learn that timing. That's nice. And also there's a storytelling mode where you have double HP and you heal after every battle. So you don't have to worry about the HP management so much. Makes that easier. I'm liking those kind of introductions so far. All right. Well, we've got a lot of composer follow-up news. It's what happens when we, for a month, we don't talk about game news all that much. And then video game headlines happen. So let's go through these pretty quickly. The Grammy nominations are out. They usually have that award show in early February, but it's important for our purposes because last year was the first year that they added the Best Score Soundtrack for Video Games and Other Interactive Media. And so for the second year, the nominees are Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 by Sarah Schachner, God of War Ragnarok by Bear McCreary, Hogwarts Legacy by Peter Murray, J. Scott Rozocki, and Chuck E. Myers, Star Wars Jedi Survivor by Stephen Barton and Gordy Hobb, Stray Gods, the role-playing musical by Jess Serro, Tripod, and Austin Wintory. So a lot of familiar names on that list. I would say a much better nominee list this year than last year, but still some interesting choices.
Man, I wish I'd been able to finish Stray Gods. I don't know if I've actually mentioned it on this show, actually. I lost my save file 3 times.
Oof.
I have had to replay Act 1 3 separate times, and at a certain point I was like, I don't want to do this again, and so I didn't.
Yeah, that'll burn you out on a game for sure. Though that's a different nomination process with like kind of them making their pitches to the Academy sort of thing versus people in the industry, making decisions like that. So we'll see. For what it's worth, Bear McCreary and God of War, their Ragnarok's also nominated for Best Immersive Audio Album, which is more about the audio technicians and how they mix multi-channel albums, but still a neat nomination there overall.
Yeah. Meanwhile, hey, Dead by Daylight, you're welcome. Though, granted, I don't think we mentioned the character that's being added. First of all, the Stranger Things DLC is back, if you remember the episode a few weeks ago. I mentioned that the licensing agreement with Netflix had run out. You couldn't buy the Stranger Things DLC anymore. And it's back now, so I guess they got a deal figured out with Netflix. So, I don't know, look forward to it leaving again in a year? I don't know. But also, the newest killer that they are adding is Chucky from Child's Play, which for some reason, when we were talking about that game, did not even come to mind.
Right.
Even though he's obvious.
And maybe it's the diminutive size. I don't know. Who knows? But need to see that coming in a couple weeks. And I'd say, you're welcome. You talked about that game and news happening around Halloween time.
I will say it is hilarious to see Dead by Daylight players already shouting about how Chucky is overpowered. He's not out yet. Nobody has played as him yet.
Gotta wait until November 28th. Speaking of things that aren't out yet, well, it was N7 Day on November 7th, and so Mass Effect, for their N7 program for Spectres in the Mass Effect universe, decided to put out a teaser for an in-engine video tease of the next Mass Effect game. It's a character wearing N7 garb, their face is covered, they're walking. It's not much of a tease, and then all the reports afterward are basically saying BioWare felt like they had to put something out. That game is nowhere close. Maybe wait 6 more years. It might be a long time since we see anything from that, but it's something. If Liara and a new crew want to go to the Andromeda Galaxy, I'm here for it.
And then I don't know how I feel about this one. Nintendo has announced a live-action Legend of Zelda movie, making it in partnership with Sony Pictures, and it's being produced by Avi Arad. I don't think live-action was the way to go, personally. I think an animated film would fit Zelda far better, but I also assumed the Mario movie was going to be bad, and then it apparently was. I still haven't seen it, but it apparently wasn't the worst.
It wasn't the worst, yeah. And apparently Miyamoto's been thinking about this for 10 years, so Okay. Do you think they just adapt the Ocarina story again?
Oh, I imagine so. I imagine it's going to be closer to Link to the Past, maybe?
Sure.
Well, no, I guess Ocarina would make the most sense, because then you get Ganondorf and you don't need to, make a big blue pig man.
Yeah, get too piggy with it. The big news continued to roll on, though, because a headline that affected Bloomberg.com and other big business news websites. Rockstar confirmed reports that for their 25th anniversary, they confirmed the existence of a next Grand Theft Auto game, and confirmed that in early December, Grand Theft Auto 6 will have its first trailer released. Surely shockwaves will be sent throughout the industry. Who knows if it'll be at Game Awards or on Rockstar's own time?
Honestly, I feel like if they're specifying December, it's a very large chance it's going to be at the Game Awards.
Yeah, I would think, Keighley would want that happening however he can.
And lastly, we're starting to get into Game Awards show season. Speaking of Game Awards. Game Awards nominations were announced the day before this goes live, but we're not in the day this goes live. We're the day before this goes live.
Yeah, what do you think the 6 Game of the Year nominations will be?
If I had to take a guess, I'm going to say it's going to be Tears of the Kingdom. It's going to be FF16. It's going to be Baldur's Gate 3, which I think will take it. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is what's going to take most Game of the Year awards this year.
I agree. It seems to be the darling.
Like Zelda, I could see coming for a few, but it really sounds like Baldur's Gate 3 is the one that's going to go. I'm going to assume Spider-Man will be in there. Usually they have like one indie, that game's never going to win pick, if I remember correctly, and I don't know what that would be this year. Maybe Sea of Stars?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the year. That's the tough thing. I think this year has been so good. I think there's a surefire 5. And I think it's Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Mario Brothers Wonder. I think those are a surefire 5. Now, when it comes to a 6th, I think it's between 3 games, and I don't know which way to go. I think it's Resident Evil 4, but do they want a remake in there?
Oh, God, that was this year. Why do I feel like that was last year?
Right, exactly. There's Final Fantasy 16. I really enjoyed that, but is it too much of like another PlayStation exclusive, or do you throw Xbox a bone, and it wasn't the same critical acclaim, but it's big AAA, all that? Do you put Starfield in your top 6 to have some parity there? So I think that's kind of where the Game of the Year conversation is going to head. I agree with you. I'd like to see Tears of the Kingdom take it, but I feel like this is Baldur's Gate 3's year, especially when the golden joysticks happened, and I'm pretty sure they gave Baldur's Gate 3 their Game of the Year. They gave Final Fantasy 16 Best Audio. What do you think will be the 5 score and music noms, if you had to think off the top of your head, for Game Awards?
I mean, if they're correct, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk will be in there.
I hope so.
Because it absolutely deserves to be in there. I would say FF16 is probably a lock on that one. Maybe Tears of the Kingdom? I could see it.
Yeah. I could also see Spider-Man 2.
I haven't heard any of the music for that game yet, so I'll take your word on that one. But what would be? I haven't heard anybody talk about the music of Baldur's Gate 3, so I don't know if it would be in there.
That's a tough one. So, I mean, I'd maybe throw Sea of Stars in there. Like, that got some good indie buzz in addition to Bomb Rush, but it's an interesting year. I think we're going to have a lot of work cut out for us when we start to pull together best of 2023.
Yeah, actively, if Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is not among those 5, that is a crime.
Yeah, we riot.
All right, speaking of crimes, which is a different way of saying sins, let's talk about Persona 2 Innocent Sin. So, Persona 2 And this was originally released for the PlayStation 1 in Japan on June 24th, 1999, at which point it did not leave Japan. A remake for the PSP, which is the version of the soundtrack that we'll be talking about, by the way, because it's the version that I am familiar with, released in Japan on April 14th, 2011, but that one did release outside of Japan, hitting North America on September 20th, 2011, and Europe on November 4th, 2011. It was developed and published by Atlus in Japan, published by Atlus USA in North America, and Ghostlight in Europe. And as I stated at the top of the show, it is one of the mythical Persona titles that released before Persona 3. That's right, kids. To quote Santa Claus in that M&M's commercial, they do exist. It is actually part one of a two-part story, the other being Eternal Punishment. It is, like the games that came after it and before it, an RPG. But unlike the games from 3 on, the social aspects that you might expect from a Persona game are gone. They are not there. They were not present yet. You spend the game with 5 party members, whom you overall get pretty much at the start of the game, and that's your party for the entire game. And then the story is 100% linear from there. The battle system, however, is kind of the same. I mean, kinda. One of the big differences is that hitting weaknesses doesn't stagger the enemy, it just does extra damage. That's pretty much it. That's all that's really different. I mean, you can use your weapons for a melee attack, or in Maya's case, you can use a gun. Or you can cast spells using personas. But one major difference, though, and a really cool thing, is the existence of fusion attacks, where if characters use specific spells or types of spells in a specific order, then those two characters will combine their turn, or more, it can be more than 2 characters. They will take their turn, combine them, and do a super attack of that kind. And finding those sort of combinations is a very interesting thing, though it's one of the few things Eternal Punishment does better, I think. So let's say you have 2 characters that use wind spells pretty much right next to each other. So like Garu or Garula, or even a spell that is not named Garu but is wind element, then you have a chance for both of those characters to then perform a super powerful wind spell, or you can mix and match elements to make like really interesting spells. There's even one that involves all 5 party members, which is really cool, but you do not get it until near the end of the game. So how else does it differ from the Persona games that we know today? Well, Personas work differently. There is no Persona fusion whatsoever. The method that you get new Personas is that you collect tarot cards from demons that you encounter in the game's dungeons. Basically, you can do demon negotiation, and if you play your cards right, no pun intended, they will give you tarot cards. And these cards can then be used to purchase a demon within that arcana, kind of like a currency. So let's say you want to get a moon persona, you have to collect a certain amount of moon cards, which you can then use to buy that moon persona. It is very tedious. I do not like it. I'm glad they backed off from it from Persona 3 on. It's not like the worst thing in the world. It's not game ruining, but it is kind of just... It's the second kind of grinding of 3 that we will talk about today. Unlike later games where only the protagonist can change personas, all of your party members can change personas.
Oh.
Every party member has a compatibility rating with each tarot that decides how strong a persona is in their hands, as well as how much SP using that persona's skills will cost. So, for instance, Maya is very compatible with Personas of the Lover's Arcana. So if you give her one of those, then spells will cost less, she'll do more damage, etc., etc. Meanwhile, if you give her one that she's not compatible with, it's going to cost an arm and a leg to cast any spell, etc., etc. And Personas also have their own XP aside from your characters, but it doesn't work the way it works in Persona games now. A Persona gets 1 point of XP every time they are summoned to use a skill. And that Persona gets stronger and learns more abilities as they rank up, which I believe most of them can go up to like rank 7. But yeah, you just have to summon them over and over again in order to make your persona stronger and get the stronger abilities in that case. And the last major difference, and the biggest sticking point of the game, is the rumor system. Throughout the city, there are rumor mongers who will give you information they heard somewhere, typically about things like how a ramen shop secretly sells weapons, or something about a dungeon that changes the layout or something that is inside of that dungeon. And once this information is in hand, the player can then go to the Kuzunoha Detective Agency to have that rumor spread throughout the city, at which point it then becomes true. By the way, this is the only way to unlock new shops, which is the only way to get stronger weapons. And it's this really stupid system. They changed it at Eternal Punishment, thank God. But it's this really dumb system where you go to all like 3 rumor mongers and they'll be like, oh yeah, this store has pretty low quality stuff, but it's really cheap. Or this store has middling stuff, but the prices are, normal. Or this store sells really good stuff, but they're extremely expensive. And then you get to go pick which one is true when you go to the Kuzunoha agency. And you have to do this every single time you want to unlock a new weapons shop or a new accessories shop. Because the stock of those shops doesn't update. It's like the one thing that I think is actively bad about the game. So, what is the story of Persona 2 Innocent Sin? In 1999, in the fictional seaside city of Sumaru, Japan, 3 high school students are butting heads. These characters are the player character, Tatsuya Suo, and a girl who is infatuated with him, Lisa Silverman, who are both from the prestigious Seven Sisters High School, while the third in the group, Eikichi Michelle Mishina, is from the rival Kasugayama High. Eventually, the argument turns into a conversation about the Joker game. See, it is rumored that if you call your own phone number, a masked man named Joker will appear to grant your wish. They decide to try the game, and are shocked when it turns out that the rumor is in fact true. Joker appearing and stealing the dreams and ambitions of their other classmates, thereby essentially erasing them from cognition. Joker goes to do the same to our group of main characters, but before he does so, he notices Tatsuya and flies into a rage, seemingly recognizing him. Joker sicks a group of demons at Tatsuya, but he, Lisa, and Eikichi all immediately awaken to the power of Persona and manage to fight the demons off. They are then approached by a being known as Philemon, who informs them that something is causing rumors in Sumaru City to become true, and with the power of Persona, they are the only ones who can stop it. Basically, when I say rumors become true, let's say there is a rumor that, hypothetically, Hitler is still alive and invading Japan right now. Then reality will change, and Hitler is now alive and invading Japan right now. Let's just say that's an example from the game.
Yeah, totally, completely, hypothetically. Mm-hmm.
But it is essentially like, oh, did you hear this about this person? At which point, once it spreads enough, it just becomes reality, is what's going on.
Yeah.
Along their investigation, they are also joined by 2 journalists who were working on a story at Seven Sisters. Maya Amano, an optimistic woman with an interest in the occult, and her photographer, Yukino Mayuzumi. They reveal they also have the power of Persona, but only Yukino can actually explain what it is, because, surprise, she is actually a character from Persona 1. There are a lot of characters from Persona 1 in both Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. Some of them are party members in both games. With their newfound power, they begin to investigate the true identity of Joker and the reason these rumors are becoming reality, which puts them into conflict with a mysterious group known as the Masked Circle, and may also find them unearthing memories from their childhood once hidden deep away in their minds. So here's what I'll ask. What are your experiences with Persona 2, Innocent Sin, specifically?
Nothing with Persona 2 or Innocent Sin, though I know it's the complicated release and remake, and one was in this region, and if you want to do Eternal Punishment, it's still only the PS1 version that you can have to go back to if you're in the States, so What a mess. But I've heard good things. Just, expect differences if you're used to 3, 4, and 5. It's kind of neat to see how there's a Joker in this game. And so that seems either intentional or not when you're talking about the character from Persona 5. That's really neat. Yeah, I've heard good things about Maya as far as characters go. Certainly themes that we'll hear that are either callbacks or brought back, referenced from 3, 4, and 5. So I mean, there are some things there. I know like little bits and pieces, but surely not enough. And I have not played any of it.
I played it last year, the PSP remake specifically, obviously, because that's the only version that's ever been released in English officially, which I also played the PSP version of Eternal Punishment for the record, because, there's a fan translation that actually was just finished, like last year, like right after I finished Innocent Sin, too. So
I mean, might as well at that point, yeah.
So at that point, this game is very good. It's dated. It has some dated stuff in it, but the PSP version does add an easy difficulty, which makes it a lot more manageable even when you get to some of the real PS1 era stuff in there in terms of difficulty.
Yeah.
The cast is great. I really like Maya. Lisa Silverman is maybe one of my favorite characters in Persona now. Maya is also kind of up there. And honestly, depending on the day, this might be number 2 in my ranking of the series.
Oh.
Depending on the day, it could switch places with 3, like, interchangeably. Which is, I think, not something I expected, and not something I would say about Eternal Punishment, but we'll get to that another day. But I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. But its story is very, very good. Its characters are very good. And some of its gameplay does leave a lot to be desired. I talked about the rumor system at length. There are things in this game that, boy, they maybe should have changed in the remake, but they didn't. But, sometimes you just want it to be relatively faithful to the original, and that's fine. As for the development of Persona 2, Innocent Sin, it began development pretty much immediately after the original Persona came out and was a pretty big success, apparently here too, which I was surprised to learn because all I know about the original release of Persona here is that it has an infamously disastrous localization. But that's all I know, but apparently it sold well here overall. So obviously, what do you do when that game is extremely successful? You greenlight a sequel immediately. And luckily, they just brought the whole same team that had worked on Persona 1 in to work on this game. A central character theme that they were looking for was apparently, quote, the growth of teenagers and how they overcome their personal troubles, which is really funny because this is one of 2 Persona games where you have multiple party members who are adults and not teenagers. I guess that's 3 now if I count strikers. But yeah, it's like Maya and Yukino are adults, and then most of your party in Eternal Punishment are adults. But it kind of fits though with the 3 like starting people. And honestly, what is the Persona series but the growth of teenagers and how they overcome their personal troubles? That's the whole series. That's the theme of the whole damn thing. And as with the rest of the series as well, the concepts for things like personas and the existence of Philemon are heavily based on Jungian psychology. But we've talked about that before when we've talked about the development of other Persona games. The idea of rumors coming true, though, was inspired by the Japanese concept of kotodama, which is apparently the belief that words can influence both the physical and spiritual worlds. Doing a quick Google, one of the several possible translations for kotodama is soul of the language. So basically, the idea that you can manifest things into the world by talking about them. Many of the game's creatures and antagonists, including the character Nyarlathotep, were pulled from the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft, which, honestly, I don't think Persona pulls from very often. Necronomicon in 5 is the only other example I can think of.
Likewise, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, I don't think they pull from Lovecraft pretty much ever. Well, here's one cool thing, though. There is technically a romance choice in this game. I'm going to be real, though. I don't think it affects anything. It's a response to one piece of dialogue, and then I don't think it is ever addressed ever again. At one point, late in the story, Tatsuya is asked to choose who he has feelings for, and not only can he answer that he reciprocates his feelings for Lisa, or he can say that he is in love with Maya, he can also answer a third character who happens to be a guy, and this is not a joke answer. He is the first and only canon gay romance option in the entire Persona series. In 1999.
I mean, yeah, you hope that changes in the next game, but I think that's all based on Japanese culture and how comfortable they are with it. But yeah, good on game makers in 1999.
On the record, they said the reason for this inclusion is they wanted to see how their audience reacted to such a relationship, but they also had to ruin that reason and say that they wanted to appeal to fans of yaoi, which, for people who do not know what yaoi is, it's boy love manga and anime.
I take it back. It was 1999. They didn't know any better. Got it. Yep.
I'm just like, when you look at how like the subject of gay people are like handled in games, especially in Persona 5, the few times it comes up, like, how did they get it right in 99? For the worst reason, but they still got it right. And then they like continue to fumble it in the future. It's bizarre to me. But anyways, let's talk about the localization, because, oh boy, you might have noticed at the start of the segment that I said the original game for PlayStation 1 did not come out here. It was a large debate within Atlus, apparently, whether or not the game should be localized for release outside of Japan. And in fact, the localization team apparently really, really wanted to localize it and release it in North America at the very least. But worries were brought up spanning from the idea that foreigners might not understand references to Japanese cultures, to, the presence of Adolf Hitler.
For real.
That had to get edited when it came out in Germany because it was coming out in Germany. But also, like I said, Persona 1 had a disastrous localization when it came out here. So that might have played a part in their idea. And hey, maybe we dodged a bullet. I don't know. But it was eventually decided that they would hold off on localization because a majority of the team that would work on that had already been shifted over to the development of Eternal Punishment. And again, despite the localization team saying they really, really wanted to localize the game, it was eventually decided, in the stupidest choice I've ever read in my life, that Innocent Sin's release outside of Japan would be dependent on Eternal Punishment's sales overseas.
Huh?
So their plan was, we will release the sequel, and if it sells well, then we will release the first game. And the thing is, apparently it did sell well, Eternal Punishment, but we still didn't get it. We still didn't get Innocent Sin. So, Persona 2 or Eternal Punishment for the PS1 released in 2000, both in Japan and North America, and it sold well, but game still never got localized.
You're also on a generation transition. That's probably why.
Yeah, that's part of it, I assume. Until the remake's release in the West, which is how we got Innocent Sin the first time. But surprise! We didn't get the Eternal Punishment remake. It's for this reason that I don't think that Persona 2 has ever been given a fair shake here. because both times it has been, you can have one game, but not the other. So I really kind of wish they would just re-release the PSP remakes. They don't even need to do another remake of the game. Just release the PSP remakes.
Or does it depend on how well the Atlas survey from a few years ago? How well does that carry over for Persona 2? Who knows?
God, I hope. I didn't see any sales numbers for the PSP version in North America of Innocent Sin, but Wikipedia does say that it got to second place on the PSP sales charts here for the first month of its release. But it also must have been under their goal. I can't imagine why else they just wouldn't release Eternal Punishment here. If it sold well, but they had this game already ready to localize. And it also might just be the PSP was not exactly selling gangbusters in North America, to be fair. It was a lot more popular in Japan than it was here. So, yeah, we as a region are cursed to never get both on one platform. We just never will. We're not allowed. But like I said, if you want to play the PSP remake of Eternal Punishment, there's a fan translation out there, and it's pretty easy to get a hold of. Just saying. Just going to put that out there.
There is a way. Wink, wink.
So Innocent Sin, upon release, reviewed pretty generally well on both the PS1 and PSP, though the PSP is the only one with a Metacritic score at 75. Critics praised the story. Even with the PSP remake, critics were saying it was, quote, one of the few aspects of the game that had not become dated. Gave a lot of praise to the characters, especially Tatsuya, who many said was successfully given a lot of personality and growth to his character, despite being a completely silent protagonist in Innocent Sin. Though there was a lot of criticism, especially for the PSP version, given to the game's dungeons, which are, pretty dull. They're short, but they're dull. And also the slower pace of its battles, which, if you happen to have something that can make the game run at double speed, not that I'm going to mention names, that helps a lot. And also, critics didn't like the rumor system, because it sucks. And you know the story from here. Eternal Punishment 2000, Persona 3 in 2006, 4 in 2008, Persona 5 in 2016, and then the 10 million spin-offs, including a Persona 5 spin-off that I believe comes out next week.
I mean, in a few days from this episode recording, the 17th.
Oh, does it? Yeah. So, Tactica. Though I've heard middling things about it, but it's on Game Pass, so I'm going to give it a shot. Maya and Lisa were apparently shown in a tech demo for Shin Megami Tensei 3, and I think that's kind of cool. And you can also, as you mentioned earlier, find multiple references to Persona 2 in both 3 and 5. Maybe in 4 as well, but I don't remember encountering any in 4. At least not nearly as many as I encountered in 3 and 5. Such as being present or the subject of programs on TV. One that springs to mind in, I think it's just, I don't know if it's an FES or if it was added in Portable, but there's one point where you can watch TV and it's, here's your Cantonese lesson for the day. And that is a Persona 2 reference because the character Lisa, she is a white girl. She is not Japanese, but she was born and raised in Japan because her dad is a super weeb who decided to move to Japan and spend all day in a kimono and make his daughter learn Japanese and everything so she can become, quote, a proper Japanese lady. Whatever the hell that means. And her way of rebelling is she taught herself Cantonese because screw you. And every once in a while when you talk to her, she will give you a lesson in a word that is in Cantonese. Though, according to people that actually speak Cantonese, she speaks broken Cantonese, which makes sense because she taught herself the language. But also, the other big Persona 3 reference is that the localized name of the MMO that serves as the Hermit social link is Innocent Sin Online, which is, obviously a reference, but the friend the player makes in the game goes by the handle Maya.
Yeah.
This is apparently not the case in the Japanese version. Apparently it's a reference to SMT1.
Oh.
But we changed it to be Innocent Sin here, which is really weird because, again, at this point, Innocent Sin had never released over here. So, Now, one of the composer we're going to focus on for Innocent Sin is a man by the name of Masaki Kurokawa, but unfortunately, I could not find a damn thing on this guy at all. As far as I can tell, he began working with Atlus around 1998, and his last credit outside of just being listed in the credits of a bunch of like Persona anniversary albums and stuff like that was in 2002. I don't think he works in games anymore. I don't think he works for Atlus anymore. And he just appears to have disappeared off the face of the earth. In terms of games he has worked on, though, his very first game was an Atlus game called Cartia, the Word of Fate. VGMDB says that he worked on the original Persona, but Moby Games does not list Persona, so take that as you will. He worked on both parts of Persona 2, as well as Shin Megami Tensei, Shin Megami Tensei 2, Shin Megami Tensei 9, and Shin Megami Tensei If. And this is one of the few games in the main Persona series where Shoji Meguro was not on the composing team whatsoever. There are songs by him on there, obviously. Aria of the Soul is in this game.
Oh, sure, yep.
But for the most part, like, that's it. He did not actually do any of the music for this game, because he was busy doing the soundtrack of a game called Maken X during Innocent Sin's development. Not familiar with that, but that's apparently why. Instead, it was composed by Toshiko Tasaki, who we talked about in episode 122 for his work on Soul Hackers, Kenichi Tsuchiya, who we talked about on 146 for his work on Shin Megami Tensei 3, and Masaki Kurokawa. And then when it was remade, the rearrangements were handled by Toshiki Konishi, episode 61, Persona Q, Ryota Kozuka, episode 208, Persona 4 Dancing, and Atsushi Kitajo, episode 79, Persona 4 Ultimax. So, Meguro also did not work on the remake's music because he was not only serving as the remake's director, it also happened to be the same time that he was working on the soundtrack to Catherine. He was once again busy with a different game. And Meguro had apparently offered Kenichi Tsuchiya a spot on the music team because he was still at Atlus. He might still be there. I don't know. And I mean, he was one of the original composers. Why not ask him? But he was apparently declined. And remixing the soundtrack for the remake was apparently a very large feat. The soundtrack contains over 100 songs, all of which needed to be rearranged. So I want to say, usually we'll go to like VGMDB and they'll have like track information and say like who composed what. Holy crap, the biggest mess I've ever experienced looking at any of these. Some of them don't list credits at all. Some of them only list some of the credits, but not all of them. Some of them just say, oh yeah, it was composed by these three guys. And that's the entirety of what it says. So I did my best. Some of them I was able to find it, but a lot of them I was not. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into the Critical 5, because I have talked plenty. Critical track number 1 is going to be one that was actually written specifically for the PSP remake. This is Unbreakable Tie.
Wanna try me, but you only got hate. Only interested in my fate and insecurities down my way. And interference, dodge them away. Let there be light in the dark night. Gotta get it back, it's time I get it back. I wanna bring it back to the good old days.
Sometimes I get sick and tired of the whole situation, but I'll never let them hold me down. 'Cause I know I got faith and courage to go on. Both moonlight shines and sunshine's got a
So this song was written by Lotus Juice and also performed by Lotus Juice, as well as the J-pop singer Asami Izawa. Again, It's the opening theme that was written exclusively for the PSP remake of Innocent Sin. And look, man, Lotus Juice shows up on a track and it sounds really good. I'm in. I'm here. Of course it's going to be on this list. And he's absolutely killing it in this. And it very much shows that this is after the period of time in which Lotus Juice got to start writing his own lyrics.
Yeah, I could see that. I have heard this song before, so it is nice to hear this one back here, and it's been years since I've heard it, I think. But yeah, always good for more Lotus Juice. It just honestly makes me excited for Persona 3 Reload in a few months, where he gets updated music tracks there as well. And yeah, this is nice to kind of, for Persona fans in the West, where this remake was coming out, to introduce this game and its story for the first time, it's nice to have a little bit of familiarity there. So I feel like that's kind of a good through line in a weird way.
And I mean, also, if you have Lotus Juice in the studio, you might as well.
Sure, yeah.
Following that, the rest of the tracks that we're going to talk about are from the original game. In fact, I'm pretty sure Unbreakable Tie is the only new track that was added to the soundtrack. Critical track number 2 is Boss Battle. Obviously, this is before the battle themes got fancy names like Last Surprise and Mass Destruction. They're just called Boss Battle and Normal Battle. But that's fine. It's also before the tradition of having a vocal battle theme started, so we will talk about the normal battle theme later, so be aware of that. But I like the boss theme just a little bit better. I think both battle themes in this game are fantastic. But this one, I think, does a great job of sort of... It's got a very... How do I put it? It almost feels like a gritty sort of song. It has this sinister feeling to it. And it's very different from boss themes that you hear later on in the series. And I think it does a really, really good job at, like, showing the stakes of the fight. And also, it's just kind of really hype when you enter a battle scenario and this song just starts playing over a cutscene before the boss fight starts. It's just a good song.
That's always fantastic. Love when that happens, then you transition into it. I feel like this is kind of drawing a little more from the Shin Megami Tensei sort of elements from the music at this time, but this is really cool, and I could hear this being hype to Battle 2, especially that intro, just before we bring in the clip there. But good use of like offbeated syncopation to kind of keep you on your toes a little bit. And just a good vibe on this one for a boss battle.
Following that is a character theme. Probably one of the more famous tracks in the game. In fact, I'd say the most famous track in the game. Critical track number 3 is Maya's theme. This song, I do know who wrote it. It was composed by Kenichi Tsuchiya. Like I said, that's I think is probably the most famous track in the game. If you have heard a song from Persona 2 in any fashion, it's probably this one. Not the least because a rendition of this song can also be used as one of the alternate songs for Tartarus in Persona 3 FES, and I believe Portable as well. So there's that. It doesn't have this tone. It's a much sadder, more somber version.
Yeah, like on piano. I don't think it's one of the best ones in Persona 3, but
Yeah.
the melody is still certainly familiar.
But this song is great, and it fits Maya to a T. Her entire thing is staying positive and looking on the bright side of any situation and making sure that they can get through it with a smile if possible. She's a very positive person, and I think that this sort of energy and this positivity in this theme is just really fitting for her. And also, this song's just really catchy. Just in general, the melody overall. I really, really like this song. It might be my favorite song of the game, I think.
Gives me Street Fighter character theme vibes, honestly. But I think you're right. For that kind of personification and the personality there, this is great instrumentation for that. And it honestly makes me wonder about the Tartarus remix, if that was the right call.
Yeah, they probably should have. I assume they could have done something different with this theme. It's just a somber piano version in the dungeon doesn't fit. I mean, it's a good arrangement. It does not fit Tartarus.
Yeah, like right, maybe instruments, but wrong location for that application.
Following that, I have one dungeon theme as well. This is, I think, the standout dungeon theme in the game. Critical track number 4 is Smile Hirasaka. So Smile Hirasaka is, I think, one of the dungeons around the midpoint of the game, if I remember correctly. I believe it is like an indoor mall with multiple floors. And the reason it sounds like this is because when you get there, the building is about to be destroyed in a terrorist attack by the Masked Circle. Like, they have bombs set up in the building and are gonna just demolish it. And you have to find the bombs before they do the thing that bombs do. And so this really tense, sort of desperate sounding theme where it really, really kind of brings across the tone of like, oh no, you are on the clock and the punishment for failing is you're gonna die. And so are a lot of other people. I think that this is 100% like the standout dungeon theme in general. It's fantastic.
Definitely liking all those low synth bassy kind of notes. Just adds that kind of element of despair when you bring all that up with its narrative elements. Counter punched, of course, by the really high synths, but just a good choice of instruments here on this one, I think. I can see why it would be a standout.
And the last track on our Critical 5, critical track number 5, is another one that I think kind of fights for one of my favorite songs in the game. This is Kimi no Tonari.
今すぐに笑ってあげましょう今すぐに歌ってあげましょう永遠に光り輝く夢につなぐいてゆけるように愛はほらここにある
This is the credits theme of Persona 2 Innocent Sin. It was written and performed by Hitomi Furuya, and it comes off of her 1999 album Thermoplastic. I think the album is just where the song lives, but it was written for Persona 2, as far as I could tell. And this song 100% nails the tone of the ending of Innocent Sin. Innocent Sin's ending is fantastic. It is kind of a bummer, but it's one of those where it's a bummer ending that has this peak of hope at the very end and isn't like all bad, and in pure Maya fashion, there is a silver lining and a bright side to the situation. And I think this song really nails that. It has sort of a happy tone to it, but also there's a good amount of sadness in the song as well. The title translates to Next to You. And man, I wish I could gush about the ending of this game, because this song like absolutely nails it. But just take my word for it. It is a emotional punch to the gut, like 100%.
I would imagine that when you're trying to set up a direct sequel to it, yeah, it's kind of got to do that. From what it sounds like with the song, no context to that, it sounds like a lot of other Japanese ending themes, if I'm being honest. But I do really appreciate that with that added context, it has the right blend of positivity and emotional wallop.
So you'd think it would be because it's setting up the sequel, but to be perfectly honest, if you didn't know Eternal Punishment existed, the ending stands alone fine.
Okay, well then.
It works great on its own. In fact, and again, this is for another day, I think it works better without Eternal Punishment's edition. But the ending stands on its own, and it would be easy to accept it as just the ending of Persona 2, which is, again, one of the reasons why I think it is a really, really good ending. For tracks on the cutting room floor, I have a couple. One that I just really like. It's another character theme, and I just really like the character, you know? The first track is Ginkgo's theme. Now, the first question you might have is, who the hell is Ginkgo? You have never mentioned a character by that name at any point. Early on in the game, while having an argument, Eikichi decides that Lisa's nickname is Ginkgo now, at which point all of the UI changes to calling her Ginkgo. And I don't know what that means. I don't think it's supposed to be an insult, but I know that she thinks it's a stupid name. But every character from there calls her that.
Now the Cantonese reference makes sense. I'm like, why is this music Chinese inspired? No,
exactly.
That checks out now, yeah.
Now the question I do not have an answer for you is why they sample a cat. I have no answer for you there. But it does have the right amount of pep that Lisa deserves. She's a very peppy girl, though peppy in that way where you can tell that it's covering some things up.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a very, very good character. This one was composed by Kenichi Tsuchiya, by the way, the other song that I was able to find the composer information for. But yeah, it's a very fun song. There's another version of this song that is a sad piano version of it, which I think is better. But putting this one here, I think is more representative of the character. And then the second track I have in the cutting room floor is Normal Battle. Again, the days before the songs got cool names, and also before they got vocals. But I think this does its job the same way that I think the boss theme does. It has more of a sort of gritty feel to it. And at first it kind of feels like it's a little repetitive, but boy, damn, does this song lodge itself into your head at some point. I came away like really, really liking this song a lot. But again, I like the boss theme better in general, but this is a good song.
Oh, it's nice to know that like I've also heard this song, and so I'm glad it's here. This is a really good pick. It is super, super catchy. And I guess this is one that gets brought forward in like Persona 5 DLC and things like that, or some people even saying in Strikers. So I think this is definitely a good one to include at the very least on the cutting room floor. Wow. Good jam.
Yeah, I think this is the song in P5. No, I think Eternal Punishment's battle theme is what comes with the Seven Sisters costume in Persona 5. I'd have to look it up, but I think it's the Eternal Punishment battle. I don't remember. So what will I never forget about Innocent Sin? Honestly, man, people are sleeping on this game. It is still a PlayStation 1 game, even with the PSP and some of the improvements they made to it. Like, be aware, some parts of this game did not age great. They age a little bit better than a lot of PS1 games, being that they're like sprite-based isometric games instead of a 3D game, which 3D is usually where you get the stuff that aged like milk. But overall, like, this game's really good. It probably has one of the best stories in the series, bar none. And I am going to start Persona 1 soon, even though the 1 hour I've played of it in the past made it very clear that it is not good.
Oh yeah, good luck with that one.
But boy, am I gonna, like, spite rush myself through that game. But yeah, Innocent Sin, I think, very underrated. 100%. If you like, I wouldn't say if you like Persona per se, because again, it's completely different from the Persona games we know of today. But if you like RPGs that have a more like urban setting, and you like stories that are a tad darker than usual, but like have extremely good character development, Innocent Sin is one you should not miss. It's fantastic. So, for our transition, we like to highlight a fan remix, a fan cover. I wanted desperately to find a cover of Kimi no Tonari, but unfortunately not that lucky. But I did find several metal and rock covers of both battle themes. The best one I think I found, though, was a cover of the normal battle theme being by the YouTuber Gil Studio. So please enjoy that, and we will be right back.
One RPG with the PSP remake down, and now we get to another RPG with a Nintendo Switch remake, once again out in a few days. This one is Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Super Mario RPG was the title of the game in Japan, where it released for Super Famicom on March 9th, 1996. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, getting that subtitle, was the release for North America on SNES on May 13th, 1996. So, a couple months apart from each other, but let's also note that this was just months before the launch of the Nintendo 64. So, still very much at the end of Super Nintendo's life. The game was released on the Wii Virtual Console service in 2008, and if you're wondering why I didn't mention a PAL release for Super Nintendo for Super Mario RPG, this would be because Wii Virtual Console was the debut release of the game in Europe and Australia.
Nice.
And it would later come out for Wii U's Virtual Console in 2015. It would be also a game that would be included in the Super NES Classic Edition, that little mini console that was released in 2017, and then a remake for Nintendo Switch set to be released in a few days on November 17th, 2023. The game is developed by Square, and it is published by Nintendo. And Super Mario RPG is a 3D isometric JRPG, with RPG elements from Square, like Final Fantasy, but with characters and platforming elements from Mario. Like most traditional JRPGs, the two main sections of the game are adventuring and turn-based battle sequences. Much of Super Mario RPG's gameplay actually is outside the monster battles, and it plays like an isometric 3D platformer. You've got traditional Mario elements such as punching floating question blocks from below that are prominent, and making jumps and things like that. But there are no random encounters, and you only encounter enemies that are visible on the field, and only if Mario comes into contact with one of those enemies. The combat is based on a traditional turn-based battle system, with the addition of action commands that amplify a move's effects. The player starts each turn by choosing to attack, defend, run, use an item, or perform magic from the combat menu. And the action command consists of timed button presses during an attack, a special move, defense, or item usage, and this would eventually become a mainstay of later Mario RPGs. The story of Super Mario RPG. One day, Mario sets out once again to rescue Princess Toadstool from King Bowser at his castle. During their battle, a giant living sword named Exor falls from the sky, breaks through the Star Road, a pathway that helps grant people's wishes, and crashes into Bowser's castle, sending Mario, Princess Toadstool, and Bowser flying in different directions, as well as scattering the 7 star fragments. Mario lands back at his pad and meets up with Toad, who tells him that he has to rescue Toadstool. Mario returns to Bowser's castle, but Exor destroys the bridge, preventing him from entering. Mario makes his way to the Mushroom Kingdom, where Mario encounters a tadpole named Mallow, who has set out to retrieve a frog coin taken by the local thief Croco. After Mario helps him retrieve the frog coin, they return to the Mushroom Kingdom to find that it is overrun by the Smithy Gang, followers of the evil robotic blacksmith king named Smithy. Big question: can Mario gather up a party to collect the 7 star fragments and defeat Smithy to free the Mushroom Kingdom? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Super Mario RPG?
So on Smash Pieces every year for April Fools, we pick a game that usually has a character that could theoretically be in Smash, maybe one day, except for the first year, which we did Goku. And the joke was always that the pre-show of every April Fool's episode was, all right, next time we're going to talk about Mario RPG for Gino. And we did not plan to play it until the end of the show, the last April Fool's episode would actually be Super Mario RPG. That was the plan and the joke. And then that kind of got thrown out the window when Nintendo was like, yeah, we just remade it. And I guess this is the time to play it. I think it is the last big release of the year that I have my eye on. It's that and Persona 5 Tactica, which comes out on the same damn day. And that's all the information I have about Mario RPG. I have never played it, was holding off on playing it for a bit. That bit is now obsolete. Sure, yeah, it's probably good. People really like it. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't played it either. For one, I'll put that out there. I don't know if I'm going to get Mario RPG. Maybe I'll have it be more like a rental. We'll see. But it's one of those games where being a part of Nintendo internet culture, you can't avoid certain things about the game. Characters like Gino and Mallow they might as well be mainstays, right? And especially when it came to Super Smash Brothers speculation, right? I mean, Gino for Brawl and going all the way back to that. I mean, that's kind of dating myself, but still, so you can't avoid certain things about this game. Certain music tracks, certainly because it's a Yoko Shimomura bop, a jam, one of her 3 definitive soundtracks, as we'll get to talking about. And so good to finally bring it to the show. Of course, because we've covered Shimomura on the show before, had to find some other way around it because she is the one and only composer on the game. So that's what we did. It was good to finally cover this game, and I think the remake gave us the perfect opportunity to do just that. So as a result, it was then good to learn about the development of the game. It almost makes me wonder that because Square was tangentially connected to Nintendo with this project, Nintendo didn't want them to talk too much about it, but you still get some information from it, and that's kind of neat. So Super Mario RPG came out of Shigeru Miyamoto's desire to make an RPG game using Mario. Plus, Square also had a desire to develop an RPG that could do better outside of Japan than their previous titles. Development began in early 1994 after a business meeting between Nintendo and Square, and pre-production ended in Q2 1995. Shinya Takahashi, who, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he's appeared in several Nintendo Direct presentations as the general manager of Nintendo's Entertainment Planning and Development Division, or EPD. He's the one who designed the game's CG models, and he surely must have felt pressure going up against the actual 3D 64-bit graphics that were just on the horizon. Final Fantasy VI, no surprise when it came out in 1994, that was the inspiration for the game's RPG elements, though the action commands were derived from Mario's platforming. It also gave a greater sense of freedom for Mario and exploration. Again, give it a few months, that would be totally revitalized, but at the time, to give Mario 8-way movement, that was a big deal. And I found it interesting that when Nintendo of America received a 60% complete version in November 1995 to start on the localization, the staff were surprised at the inclusion of an RPG battle system.
To be fair, at the time, you would not expect that from Mario in any way.
True, but I would also think that if the project were titled Super Mario RPG, it might suggest something. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars is one of only 7 SNES games released outside Japan to use the Nintendo SA1 chip, or the Super Accelerator 1 chip. Kirby Superstar is another notable one, and this allowed for higher clock speeds, faster access to RAM, greater data storage and compression, and more. So even then, they're making slight improvements to the chips on the cartridges at the time, and more could be squeezed out of the game. Nintendo's representatives cited the need to optimize the game for PAL televisions. You gotta change up those frame rates, and also the need to translate it into multiple languages, as that these were the reasons why the game didn't launch in Europe. Not sure I buy it. Could also have been the console generation transition, but
I was always under the impression it was the console generation transition.
Yeah, so it could very well be that, but I'm glad they got it eventually, but a little bit of a surprising note that Europe didn't get this game for quite a while. When it did come out, though, it reviewed very well, with a game rankings average of 89%. Though its battle system and characters were criticized by a few critics, it garnered praise for its graphics and for its humor in particular. It's estimated at selling 2.14 million copies, making it the 20th best-selling SNES game of all time, though 1.47 million of those were from Japan. Fortunately, it exceeded expectations outside of Japan, as it had been the most rented game in the United States for 14 weeks straight, and it went on to be the 6th best-selling video game of 1996 in the US. Electronic Gaming Monthly editors named Super Mario RPG a runner-up for both Super NES Game of the Year, behind Tetris Attack, and Role-Playing Game of the Year, behind Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. Not surprising that it didn't make any further dents in 1996 Games of the Year when you had Super Mario 64. In 2018, Complex ranked the game 8th on their The Best Super Nintendo Games of All Time list. And in 2009, Official Nintendo magazine ranked the game 34th on a list of greatest Nintendo games. It was also interesting to see, like, in 1997, some list put it 20th on best games of all time. And it's like, do you know how out of date that is? 1997. I don't know if I'm going to, bring that up as something really notable, but okay. The legacy of Super Mario RPG, obviously it established conventions for its thematic and spiritual successors, and that would be the Paper Mario series and the Mario and Luigi series. In fact, as we've noted before, Paper Mario was originally planned to be Super Mario RPG 2, while Super Mario RPG's directors would go on to establish Alpha Dream, and these would become the developers and makers of the Mario and Luigi series. And they'd even bring Yoko Shimomura along for that series' ride. Various locations and characters from the game appear in the children's book Mario and the Incredible Rescue, which was released by Scholastic in 2006. Did not ever think I'd bring up Scholastic on this show. Brings me back to reading books and eating at Pizza Hut.
Book fair, baby.
Yeah, book fairs. Though his only starring role in a video game was in Super Mario RPG, Masahiro Sakurai added the fan-favorite character Geno as a Mii fighter costume to the crossover fighting game series Super Smash Bros. As paid DLC. And of course, with this game getting a remake, it will feature full 3D graphics and the option to switch between the original music and a newly arranged soundtrack by Yoko Shimomura. New battle mechanics include the ability to damage all enemies when performing perfect action commands, and powerful triple moves could be performed after building a gauge using successful action commands. Other additions include an easier difficulty setting, a sound player, a bestiary to view enemies that the player has encountered, and post-game boss rematches. So to talk about the music in Super Mario RPG, let's talk about a man named Hidenori Suzuki. And Hidenori Suzuki was born on February 3rd, 1974 in Japan. He is a sound programmer. And he's currently a member at Procyon Studio Co., Ltd., which is Yasunori Mitsuda's production company. Unfortunately, that's all I could find on him, though he's like the second name listed as far as like employee names, so he must be a pretty early founder, or at least a pretty big deal behind Mitsuda. So he's still working seemingly today. In fact, his discography has a bunch of programming work on it, especially for audio and music, starting with Seiken Densetsu 3, or we know the game now today as Trials of Mana, Bahamut Lagoon, Super Mario RPG, Final Fantasy Tactics, Front Mission Alternative, Xenogears, Kodelka, Shadow Hearts, Xenosaga Episode 1, Der Wille zur Macht, Luminous Arc, and quite a lot of Professor Layton games, including Curious Village, Diabolical Box, Unwound Future, and The Last Spectre, so the first 4 in the franchise. He also worked on some other Level 5 games, including Inazuma 11 and Inazuma 11-2 Firestorm. Got Disaster Day of Crisis in here, so
yeah,
there's that one. He also worked on 999, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, and Kid Icarus Uprising. More recently, he worked on Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, so there's that connection with Mitsuda.
We need more episodes that mention Disaster Day of Crisis.
Do we?
Who did that soundtrack?
I mean, it's a game story, all right, but I don't know if I've ever heard any of the music from it.
I don't think I remember the music. I watched a Let's Play once. Hold on, I'm going to look up who did the Yoshihiro Ike. Huh? We've never talked about him before.
I don't know. Put it on the 2024 outline. We'll figure it out sometime. Yeah, that sure is a video game. For Super Mario RPG's music, the music is composed by the one and only Yoko Shimomura, one of your all-time favorites. She's up there for me too. Just amazing melody work done. And yes, as I mentioned, she is also rearranging the soundtrack for the upcoming remake, though if her recent work on doing the same with last year's Live Alive remake of her own work if that's any indication, the Super Mario RPG remake album is going to be excellent. Some melodies are, of course, based off of Koji Kondo's work in Super Mario Bros. That's to be expected. That's a given. But Nobuo Uematsu's work from Final Fantasy IV is included on 3 tracks in the game. But we'll get to that later. Shimomura puts the Super Mario RPG score in high regard, though, as one of the turning points in her career as a composer, along with Street Fighter II before and Kingdom Hearts after. And the music from the game was released on a 2-disc soundtrack album in Japan by NTT Publishing on March 25th, 1996, entitled Super Mario RPG Original Sound Version. Yes, a subtitle original sound version that seems pretty common with a lot of Square music albums. Though, does it mean it gets availability on streaming services? No!
Nope.
But we'll get to that at the end of the episode. Anyway, let's get into the music for Super Mario RPG. And a tough Critical 5 to put together, honestly, but I think I did an okay job. And let's start with the first track. This is called Happy Adventure, Delightful Adventure. This track with its interesting title name is, of course, as all of these, composed by Yoko Shimomura, but this is the second part of the intro movie. The first part is a track called Flower Garden, and it's the track that you hear in the beginning of the remake trailer, where Toadstool is sitting in the flower garden. It's the da 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 da. But then it transitions into this, and you know, hearing this piece, I feel like it's one of those songs that is just like definitive as like the kind of energy and mood that you're going to get from this game. It's a pretty happy-go-lucky adventure, all things considered, here in the Mario Kingdom, and you get the kind of bass energy going underneath, but the kind of almost marimba-like sort of melodies going. Yoko Shimomura and melodies that you could almost imagine in Kingdom Hearts, right? Like you could see the through line in a way, but the infectiousness is right there immediately, and the that kind of just that positive energy is so Super Mario RPG. Had to be here.
It very much does sound like, also, I can see a through line from here to Paper Mario soundtracks for sure.
Oh yeah, sure.
And Mario and Luigi soundtracks, honestly. So like this set the stage for a lot of stuff, turns out.
Yeah, even if it wasn't like an actual in-game sort of melody, like if you want to say, well, we're putting Square and Nintendo together and like this is how you're introducing it, yeah, it's a perfect way to do that. But that kind of vibe continues in what you'd expect in a JRPG. It would be the main battle theme, and this is critical track number 2, Fight Against Monsters. There are certain tracks where you hear that if Yoko Shimomura is revisiting her old work and rearranging it with modern instruments, there are some tracks like this one where it's like, oh, I can't wait to hear how she goes and tackles this one. And this is one of those iconic songs, not the most iconic song I would say from this game, but once you hear this main battle theme, the ba 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 da ba 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 ba, like, I feel like this just gets repurposed everywhere in Nintendo fan culture, and it's just a song that's out there and known. So yeah, Fight Against Monsters isn't the most original title, but wow, the bouncy kinetic energy and positive mood here is undeniable.
There's another theme.
Yeah, unoriginal titles.
Battle themes are just called Fight.
Yeah.
This is, I think, one of two tracks in this game that I have heard. The other is obvious, I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't need to say what it is, but we'll get to it.
It is in the Critical 5. Do not worry, everyone.
I have heard this song more than a few times at the very least, though now that I think about it, I could not tell you where.
Right? Like, I feel like we'll talk about another track eventually on the cutting room floor where you've heard it if you've been on the internet and it just gets used, but I couldn't pin where. But I mean, yeah, this is a classic Mario RPG battle theme, and it's kind of where it all started. And yet, the battle themes would only get sillier from there. But we'll save that for a little bit. Next up here on the Critical 5 is Critical Track number 3, and this is also, I don't know if is it just the translation on this one? Critical Track number 3 is called Still the Road is Full of Dangers. Now this track, we have gotten a taste of Shimomura's remix. Same thing will be said with another track here, but we heard this piece in the remake trailer where Mario's jumping and it's the title splash revealing the truth. Wow, this is such, again, the positive infectiousness for, there'll be some dark moments that comes in this game, but when you're talking about like Mario going on an RPG, there's got to be that Nintendo happiness to it in a way, and this definitely carries over. Though this plays in Bandit's Way, where Mario and his new ally Mallow chase down the crook Croco during the events of the game. So kind of an early starting road, if you will, going on that first big Star Piece adventure.
Yeah, I agree. This is, it's got the bounciness that you expect from a Mario thing, but again, does not quite sound like what Mario sounds like at this point in time. That being said, you know what I hear in this? Wonderland.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I hear it's just, I straight up just hear Wonderland. So that's where my brain goes.
I mean, it's not surprising. Yoko Shimomura and her continued amazing work that does check out. She's just so good at having a theme that really sticks in your head. And I think for that to be an early first impression on the kind of quality work she's going to do with the remake, yeah, I'm very excited for that for sure. Number 4 on the critical track is back to another battle theme, and this one is called Fight Against an Armed Boss. Again, be around the internet long enough, you'll have heard this theme before. And the title is named as such with an armed boss because you're against the Smithy Gang for these boss themes, and they're the main antagonists that are sentient weapons. So the bosses are arms, they are weapons, that they don't just have limbs, they are actual weapons. That being said, this clarinet melody with a boom, 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 it's just plug it into my veins. Like that is, I get old internet vibes from this as, people having fond nostalgic memories for it. And again, for a soundtrack, and when you haven't played the game before, when you don't know too much about the soundtrack, when you've heard a piece before, it's a pretty good chance it's a pretty essential track in the overall grand scheme of the game. So yeah, I think it totally deserves to be here on the Critical 5.
See, I've never heard this song. Ever.
Interesting. Okay.
But I do agree with the dun 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 dun. It gives it a nice, almost stomping feeling, which is weird considering you said they're just weapons. I assume that means most of them do not have feet. But that's the feeling I get. I don't know. It has a really good sense of motion to this one. It's got a good pace.
Definitely does. And I feel like that, again, that's Shimomura. That's her work. She knows that well. And we'll round out the Critical 5 with, of course, the song that had to be here. You're waiting for it. We're putting it here at the end. For Super Mario RPG, critical track number 5 is, of course, Beware the Forest's Mushrooms. When Nintendo's marketing made the announcement that you'll be able to switch between the original and the remastered soundtracks for the game, or maybe it was some person who discovered and dug it up. Regardless, the video got passed around the internet a couple months ago. Of course it's with this song. Of course it's the track that plays in Forest Maze, the most iconic song, I would say, in the game, and it happens to be the location where Gino joins the party after the second star piece is claimed. So, yeah, a big level for Gino. Like, when everyone's like, Gino for Brawl, obviously this is the track that's going to go with Gino. So, yeah, just a lot of memories without even playing the game that get tied to this song. And, yeah, it's the one. If there was going to be one track for this game, it's Beware the Forest's Mushrooms.
Yep. And again, you can hear the Kingdom Hearts dripping off of this song. Especially the midis. Like, specifically the midis sound like midis that she would go on to use in Kingdom Hearts, weirdly enough.
I've never thought about it that way before, but that's exactly right. And, things about doing this show, you think about those through lines.
But yeah, I don't know what else to say about this song that hasn't already been said. It's extremely catchy, and it is the most iconic song from this game for a reason.
But this soundtrack is so good that it's one of those games when it comes to tracks on the cutting room floor that I have to be like, Joe, I'm throwing a couple of them your way. Please hit me with them.
For the record, I almost did this for Persona 2 as well. Very, very nearly.
Fair.
Okay, so the first track on the cutting room floor for me is Sad Song. And yeah, I've heard this song before. Every YouTuber on the planet has used this song at least once in some video.
Yeah, it's like a meme song at this point, and I couldn't point to you a specific example, but I feel like it's almost used more ironically at a certain point, like not for actual sad things, but it's like, oh look, here it is, do, do, do.
Like Eeyore sad things.
Eeyore vibes, yes.
It's certainly, I can't take it seriously now because of that. But I mean, if they want to tell me it's sad, I will believe Shimamura. If she tells me it's sad, I'll follow her to the ends of the earth. Not really. I don't want to go there.
It's a melancholy theme that's used in Tadpole Pond. And yeah, it was a track that was like, oh my God, you're telling me that this song all along was in Super Mario RPG? It's from this?
Yeah, I didn't know it was from this. The other track on the cutting room floor, this one, is, I think this was a good, I've never listened to this song, but I just knowing what it is, good addition. This is Fight Against Culex. So if you're thinking this sounds kind of familiar, you're correct. This is very famously for an optional hidden boss, like a super boss in the game that is a Final Fantasy style battle. And in fact, this song is from Final Fantasy IV. It is the boss battle theme, or Battle 2, because remember, we didn't name battle themes creatively back then. I don't know when that started, but now that I'm thinking about it, there was like a distinct time. Other Uematsu tracks in the game include the victory jingle, which plays when you win the fight, and the prelude, which plays when you talk to the character afterwards. And apparently Culex's Japanese name is Crystaller, and he's still going to be 16-bit in the remake, which sounds great.
Good choices. Yeah, he gets more powerful when he uses the 4 big crystals, and that's not a surprise. But yeah, I think definitely one of those big examples. You look at, God, I'm going to date myself even further, Screw Attack top 10 lists and things like that. When you point to like optional bosses, like Culex in Super Mario RPG is iconic. And, I think for this to be Uematsu's inclusion in the soundtrack works just fine. For me, I've got a couple other tracks that I think should also be included. It's not meme worthy or crossover or anything like that I wanted to throw your way, but this one is called Fight Against a Somewhat Stronger Monster.
How did they somehow make it more generic?
Yeah, it's super weird that way, right? And just adding more adjectives on there. But wow, this is such a cool jazzy boss track. It's just the normal boss theme, like not against the Smithy Gang or anything like that. But this is the other track from the remake trailer that you got a taste of how Shimamura would modernize it, make it sound excellent there. But you know what also sounded really good with the instruments available at the time? The jazzy kind of trumpet vibes going on, and ba-da-da-da. I mean, man, really, really different genre feel to it. I don't think you can say like, oh yeah, that sounds like future Kingdom Hearts work, but it's still so incredibly infectious and positive.
Oh yeah, this sounds nothing like any of her future work, really. I'm sure there's some Paper Mario theme that I could point to, but I do not know. Thousand Year Door is the only soundtrack I can think of off the top of my head. It's good, and I agree. The little jazz trumpet is fun.
The other track here that I have on the cutting room floor, probably a better wrap it all up kind of thing, but let's get to the final boss theme. It's Fight Against Smithy. Now, granted, this is only the first phase of the final boss battle. The second phase is titled like Smithy who likes transforming or something like that. So just
Okay.
A+ titles.
It was a different time.
You know, it sure was. But for this one, I really like the sound of it because it kind of has like the stakes feeling of if you were battling like Bowser or something like that. But because Smithy is a robot with malicious intentions, you kind of have this mechanical feel going on behind it. I like the orchestra hits. You know, there's something about the orchestra hit synth instrument that has been lost to time. But when it hits, it works. And I like this as a kind of end stakes battle, especially with all the fun energy that's been kind of pervasive. This is a little bit of a heavier feel and mood to it.
It also has like, it feels more like almost a hip hop sort of beat to it.
Oh, sure. I could see it being sampled. Yeah.
It's very good, but I don't think I would replace anything on the Critical 5 with it, to be fair.
No, I agree. And I think that's why I was like, it's good to put it on cutting room floor, but it's not strong enough to break what was a pretty strong, I think, Critical 5 there. Yeah, for sure. So what will I never forget about Super Mario RPG? It's certain songs that will stand the test of time in internet culture, like Beware the Forest Mushrooms. I love that we discovered Sad Song, and it's like, oh, it's that internet meme song. So little things like that. The music's gonna be great. I'm really looking forward to eventually playing the remake. I don't think it's gonna be right at launch. Just honestly more excited for Shimomura's arrangements, because yeah, like I said, if she went and did what she did with Live Alive, and now she's going back to one of her works that she looks back on most fondly, yeah, watch out. Possible, contention maybe for best soundtrack of the year, or at least getting in the top 10.
Possibly, but it's got some damn good competition currently.
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, maybe honorable mention at the very least. All right. Good week back here on Original Soundchat talking about RPGs that got remakes on portable platforms. Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. And that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at String Pixel. The video version is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want. That's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smash Your Pieces, is hosted. And you can find Smash Your Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe, including Spotify, where we not only have a feed of podcast episodes, but we also have a video game music playlist. If we talk about a track on this show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big playlist. Joe, anything added this week?
Did you know that Persona 2 is on Spotify?
Look at that. Way to go, Atlas.
I found that out last year. That means that Persona 1 is literally the only Persona game missing.
I mean, obviously, Mario RPG is not, thanks Nintendo, but that's really cool. We like that. When you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST, where you can leave some feedback for us, tell us how we're doing with these episodes, what did we miss on our list, and also give us some suggestions for games to cover on the show. Starting to put some titles in the mix next year. I guess we might have to do Disaster Crisis as well, so
I'll go mark it down, don't you worry.
But speaking of next week, it's our Thanksgiving Q&A episode, so we really need your help. Reach out to us on social media, wherever you'd like to make contact with us, and give us some suggestions for questions to answer. It's our Thanksgiving episode, as Joe mentioned last week. Last year, it fell on episode 200, so that didn't work out. So it's been a couple years since we've answered some Q&A questions to give us a little break for the holidays. So let us know. That will be up next week.
And I want to specify, because I feel like people forget this. The questions do not necessarily have to be about the show's subject matter.
Oh, yeah, of course.
They can be, but they don't have to be. So if your worry is that you don't have a question about video game music, don't worry, you don't have to.
Very, very good clarification. I agree that that's an important distinction. All right, to play us out, I'd like to highlight a fan cover, fan remake, whether it's on YouTube, OC Remix, wherever. It's certainly a game that would apply to OC Remix, but there is no other song that could be selected. You know how in Mario World a few weeks ago had to bring the classic Hyaden Super Mario World theme? Likewise, with Beware the Forest Mushrooms, we got to go to Kerbifer, and Chris Niosi did his song Rost Forest all the way back on Newgrounds back in the day. Now, Christopher Niosi has done a modernized take on Rost Forest recently, if that's been popping up in your video algorithms for YouTube like it has for me, and that's great. I love that he did that. However, I'm too attached to the original, and so just like we did for Hyaden's 2008 jam, let's go back to 2007 for Kerbifer's Rost Forest. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.